Don't cry, Uncle, and Don't Cry, Uncle. Part 2. Another uncle who left an impression on me was Uncle Cease, shortened from Cecil and pronounced Cease. Everyone called him Uncle Cease except my brother Joe. Joe called everyone without their title and by a nickname. So Uncle Cease was, "Hey, Cease." Grandpa was, "Hey, Willie." And Uncle Henry was, "Hey, Hank." Uncle Cease was a sly sort of man who had a look about him like a fox. He once caught Joe, Tim, and me snooping around one of his old barns, and he ran us off his place. We wanted a closer look at the old airplane and the antique cars he had in his buildings. How he landed that airplane and got it into a barn in the middle of the wooded valley remains a mystery. I thought a lot about that, but concluded the fox must have sneaked it in part by part. Uncle Cease was married to our Aunt Edith, a woman who was completely deaf. My only mental picture of her is one of standing at her sink and washing the dishes. Uncle Cease and Aunt Edith lived in an old house that was built on the side of a hill. Uncle Cease had a secret entrance in the back of the house. He could slip in and leave without being noticed. Sometimes, usually once a year for 10 months at a time, Uncle Cease would slip out the mysterious door and go to Mexico. Aunt Edith remained at her quiet station doing dishes and gazing out her kitchen window on the silent world below. It seems to me that she simply stood at that window for months, waiting for her husband to come home. The day would arrive, always without notice, when Uncle Cease slipped into the house through the hidden door in the back. He put his .22 caliber rifle in the corner and presented the rabbit he had shot to Aunt Edith. She responded in her shrillest, loud voice, "Oh, good, supper." For anyone else to get into the house, a high, steep set of open stairs with a handrail on one side had to be ascended. I hated those stairs because of the height. The house was constructed high off the ground with a panoramic view of his property below. Evidently, the old fox wanted to know when those curious McCoy boys began snooping around his old buildings. It also gave him a view of what his neighbor, Uncle Henry, was doing. Whenever he began a conversation, Uncle Cease would dazzle us with his amazing knowledge of Spanish. With a soft voice and eyes that flashed, Uncle Cease said, "Como está usted?" When we were younger, that was really impressive. Tim stood with his mouth open in amazement, and Joe would say, "Hey, Cease, tell us some more of that Spanish talk." Uncle Cease would grin, revealing at least 2 canine teeth, and say, "Muy bien." Tim uttered a "wow," while Joe laughed and shouted, "Hey, Mike, did you hear him? Cease can do Spanish." Then the old fox would tell us what he was going to do for us 3 boys. One day, very soon, he would have a treasure hunt for us. He was going to assemble and bury several treasure chests in Uncle Alf's field and make up a treasure map and leave us clues for finding the treasures. "Will there be a treasure box for each one of us?" asked Tim. "Oh, yes," Uncle Cease replied with squinting eyes. "One for each of you." Joe urged, "Hey, Cease, talk some more of that Spanish." "Por qué?" "Hey, Mike, did you hear him? Did you? He did it again." "What's going to be in my treasure box?" asked Tim. "Secret treasure," whispered the fox as he scanned the area, making sure no one could hear him, especially Aunt Edith. Joe continued with his next hey. "Hey, cease! I'll bet you don't know any more of that Spanish talk." "Que tal?" "Hey, Mikey did it again." "What's the secret treasure for me?" asked Tim. Uncle Cease grinned slyly and whispered his answer. "If I told you, it wouldn't be a secret." "Hey, Cease, how would you say that in that Spanish talk of yours?" "You boys run along home now. I have a lot of work to do with 3 secret treasure chests, the secret treasure map, and hiding all the clues. It's going to take me a few days to get it all done and ready for you." Whenever we saw Uncle Cease in the following 5 or 6 years, we'd ask him how the treasure hunt was coming. He assured us that he was working on it. Tim was particularly irritated at Uncle Cease's long preparations. Uncle Henry lived next to and downhill from Uncle Cease. To say that the two never cared for one another would be understating the point. Let's just say that they didn't spend a whole lot of time together. Why this was the situation remains unknown to me to this day. To speculate would only begin to fabricate fables, something I am determined not to do in this account. Uncle Henry was a cheesemaker in Battleground, a town so famous that before the high school team was known as the Tigers, they were the Cheesemakers. The great football rivalry was between the Battleground Cheesemakers and the Camas Papermakers. There is completely, absolutely, and totally no truth to the assertion that Uncle Henry was the team mascot during those years when the high school teams were known as the Cheesemakers. As a man of short stature and husky build, Uncle Henry measured about 5 feet 5 inches in any direction. He was married to Auntie Glad, who kept him in line. Uncle Henry enjoyed his beer far more than he should have. The more beer he consumed, the madder he got at Uncle Cease. Uncle Henry packed his rifle and he walked the graveled road in front of our house in search of his brother-in-law Cecil. What he would have done with Uncle Cease was not immediately known to us, though Uncle Cease probably had an inkling. Uncle Henry claimed to be the boxing champion of the United States Navy during World War II. He also made it known that one year he had won the Northwest Heavyweight Wrestling Championship at Battleground Lake. Uncle Henry said he was one of the toughest men who had ever lived. On summer days, when Uncle Henry walked the gravel road with a stubby of beer in each hand, my brothers and I went out to talk with him. A typical conversation went something like this. "Hey, Hank, were you in the big one?" The 70-year-old man gazed at my 9-year-old brother and slurred out, "That's right, Joe. We fought side by side in the trenches of the big one." Trying to trip him up, I countered, "But, Uncle Henry, I thought you were in the Navy. How could you fight in the trenches during the big one?" He slowly turned his head in my direction, focused his eyes through me, and burped out, "Classified information. Only Joe and me know about it. We've been in the big one, right, Joe?" "Hey, Mike, that's right. You wouldn't know about that kind of secret stuff. You never were in the big one, like me and Hank." "Was it really secret? Did they have any secret treasures?" asked Tim. "Hey, Hank, it was top secret stuff, right?" "You said it, Joe." "Hey, Hank, old Cease couldn't whoop you, could he?" Uncle Henry's face darkened and his eyes focused in anger. After Auntie Glad died from cancer, Uncle Henry went on some rather extended and severe drinking binges. We could always tell when he was going strong because he packed his rifle and he wore his pink bedroom slippers and a pair of bib overalls, the kind with 2 pockets in front, 2 in the back, 2 below the chin, and 1 down each side leg. When he went for a walk, he would only go as far as his beer supply permitted. He loaded up his bib overalls with 8 stubbies of beer in his pockets and began his walk with 2 more in one hand and his rifle in the other. Uncle Henry generally did not get further than a quarter mile from his house before he ran out of beer. During the later stages of a binge, he would become very silent, and he walked the road, stopping in front of our house to stare at us. He didn't talk, and we didn't want to talk with him at such times. With the Battleground team having given up the name Cheesemakers, Uncle Henry was no longer the team mascot, which, of course, he completely, absolutely, and totally wasn't anyway. Some thought that the pink slippers were the reason he had to give up being the team mascot and why the team became known as the Tigers. Nothing could be further from the truth. Closer is the fact that Uncle Henry had so many beer bottles in his bib overalls that when he tried a flip in the gym on the floor in his pink slippers, he might have landed wrong and severely cut himself on a 6-pack of beer bottles. That's actually closer to what probably happened. Anyway, one summer evening, my brothers and I were home by ourselves. Mom was on the long run to Stevenson, Washington, with the Vancouver bookmobile, and we were watching television or wondering how mad Mom would get if we put Shep's muddy paw prints on the ceiling, or playing ice hockey with Uncle Bud's cue sticks, using the 8-ball as the puck. Whatever the situation, there was a knock at the door. The mirror on the side wall was positioned so that we could see who was at the front door before opening it. One of us turned the porch light on, and we saw that it was Uncle Cease. He became frantic, ducking down, making a shrieking sort of bark, and looking out to the road. He rapped on the door louder and with great determination. The door was chained, and I opened it, permitting him to talk to us, but also preventing him from entering. As far as I remember, Uncle Cease had never been on our front porch. Uncle Cease put his mouth near the 1-inch gap in the door and ordered in a high-pitched, demanding squawk, "Turn the light out! Turn the light off! Now!" I turned the light off and asked him, "Why?" In a whispering, weeping manner, Uncle Cease replied, "Henry's got a gun and he's going to shoot me. Let me in. Open the door and let me in." Tim flipped the porch light switch on, and Uncle Cease became more frantic, and he started hopping around once again. "Turn the light off! Turn the light off!" Through the 1-inch gap in the door, Uncle Cease heard the clear, distinct, mocking voice of my brother Joe. "Hey, Cease, ¿cómo está usted? Turn the light off and let me in." Tim asked, "Is the treasure hunt ready yet?" "Let me in." Joe asked, "Hey, Cease, ¿por qué?" Tim offered, "Slip the treasure map to us and we'll turn the light off." Uncle Cease answered Joe's question, weeping openly as he did. "Henry's got a gun. He's gonna shoot me." "Hey, Cease, muy bien. Is my treasure chest gonna be hard to find? You boys have got to help me. Henry's gonna shoot me." Won't you boys help me? Please, won't you help me?" There was an instant of silence. Then, from the inside of the 1-inch gap in the door, Uncle Cease got his answer as a trio responded with different yells and shouts. "Shoot him! He's right here, Uncle Henry! Shoot him! Hey, Hank, shoot him! He's never been in the big one, you know." Uncle Cease gave a shriek and disappeared into the dark woods to the east of our house. My brothers and I turned all the lights off, closed the door, and waited in the darkness. Joe whispered, "Hey, Mike, I think Cease is going to Mexico." Now, I don't ever recall seeing Uncle Cease again. My mom tells me that he went to Tennessee. I understand that he died there, but I don't think that it was because Uncle Henry shot him. The obvious reason being, Uncle Henry's bib overalls didn't have enough pockets for such a long walk.